He loves music, and so I just thank you. And we are very blessed to have somebody like our brother up here to do this. All right, so back to the message. We're going through a series on love, but not any love. We're going through a series on the revolutionary love of Jesus Christ, which this morning is actually going to do it again. We've gone through a series of sermons. If you haven't had a chance to listen to them, I encourage you to go online and listen, because love was redefined by Jesus. Grace and truth came through Jesus. He took this Greek idea of love and he expanded it. What we believe in as love as Christians is so much more than the world has to offer. We talked about how love is generous, because usually this time of year we're reminded of being generous. We talked about how love takes time. It's going to take time out of your day. And love makes plans, how we need to be better planners to love others. And then just how love serves other people sacrificially. And all of that was so incredible and exciting and good to learn. And because of that, I just want to say something to this church before we move into this message. Thank you. Believe it or not, if you've come to church here for any length of time, you are more than likely a very generous person. And so even when I preach this morning to you, it'll be a reminder, because you'll understand the value. We need to be reminded of what we have and the gratitude we should have. And I just think that some of you, it's just going to be that, a reminder. Some of you, it's going to be a challenge. Like, I need to be more of that. I want more of that Jesus in my life. And to others, it'll be salvation itself. Like, I need a new heart transplant time. I need to hear the good news. Today, we're going to talk about an interesting subject. Love sets boundaries. Love sets boundaries. There is no such thing as a loving parent, a loving spouse, a loving anything if there aren't boundaries. But yet, that is not the love you were raised in. The love you were raised in is love means I could do whatever I want for my personal pleasure to make me feel good. That's actually called hedonism. That is not Christian love. Christian love has many boundaries set to it that give you freedom, because we are free in Christ. Once you understand the nature of your boundaries, you're able to go, wow, this is so cool. I feel like I'm human, fully human. Well, that's what Jesus was, the perfect, fully human example for us. Also, what we're about to talk about is also very painful and difficult, and it's something you could take a class on, and you could study what we're about to talk about for months, because I'm about to introduce you into some habits, disciplines, that you really need to put into your life, because the culture doesn't press into this. The culture you're in right now presses against these. It's interesting. As God spoke through the letter of 1 John, he said this: if someone has enough money to live well and sees a brother or sister in need but shows no compassion, how can God's love be in that person? And it's sort of a self-answering question that the answer is he can't. Do you have enough money to live well? So I want to backtrack and set the context. First of all, everybody on the planet has been given the same 24 hours a day. When it comes to setting boundaries of love for time, we talked about that. Everybody around the world, no matter who they are, I'm a little hot in the mic, Tommy. Sorry about that. It's like, no matter who they are, everybody around the world has the same amount of time. The other thing is, around the world, we're all given abilities by God. They vary. You may want to be a great singer, but you're not. But you can sing, but you're not a great singer, right? You may want to play an instrument. And you know what? Great, you may be able to play an instrument. Are you great? Probably not. But could you be good? Absolutely. Most of us discipline our lives to be good at things. Some people are born great at things. Have you ever noticed that? That natural ability where you're sitting there going, are you kidding me? I met a guy who could learn languages. All you had to do is pick him up, drop him in a country for 1 month. 1 month. I'm not kidding. When I met him, he already knew 12, I think. And it's just fascinating how God has given each of us different abilities. I love that. But yet, what was so cool about Jesus is he walked into this world and he gave us the boundaries of our love, the boundaries of when he says here, show compassion on someone, who's he talking to? Is he talking about the child in India? Because if you're responsible for the child in India, then you're going to have nothing but anxiety the rest of your life. But when Jesus introduced us to love, he set boundaries on it, and he talked about the Good Samaritan. Remember that story? And we began to realize loving your neighbor literally means anybody you come in contact with in your day, your boundary, your setting, your environment, your culture. Does it mean we don't care about other people in other countries? No, absolutely not, which you'll discover. But the love of Christ sets boundaries that are healthy for you mentally and in your heart. Because I don't know about you, when you start to study other places and people groups, your heart just goes out. You're concerned about a great many things because you care. There's a beautiful verse in Leviticus that basically says the earth belongs to God and everything in it. That's a good place to start with your heart. Do you believe the earth is God's and everything in it? So I want to talk a little bit about this. You'll sit there and go, is this the Bible? Well, remember the verse. If someone has enough money to live well and sees a brother or sister in need but shows no compassion, how can God's love be in that person? I want to bring out a point. The disparity of poverty. We're not talking about time. We're not talking about abilities. We're now talking about the economics of life. The disparity of poverty is found both between nations and within nations. Now, every year I try to look at this and see if God's working in our church, how this applies, and I look at sort of what's going on in the world, and you guys need an update. So this is the update of the message. There are 7.8 billion people in this world. 47% of them live on less than $205.50 a month. I'm still a little hot. I'm getting feedback up here. I don't know where it's coming from. 47% of them live on $205.50 a month or less. In fact, 7% of them live on $64.50 a month. 44 million people. When we did our ministry in Africa for over a decade and we're reevaluating where to go in the world, there was not just poverty. In the Bible, Jesus is don't forget the poor. But it wasn't just poverty, it's a culture of poverty, which means even if you worked 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, you would not get out of poverty. There's a huge difference between what we would call United States poverty and sub-Saharan African poverty, Asian poverty. Huge differences. And I want us to frame it the way it should be framed first, okay? These statistics are going to come out of the Census, World Bank. They're all reliable resources. But when you're making $1.90 a day or less, you're poor. What is fascinating to me is, do you have $25? Now, you can take a box for $25, maybe $30, and send it somewhere in the world where that would be equivalent to probably, half a month's pay for an adult. And you can send a gift to a child that's never had a gift. And for us, that's about, it used to be 5 times at Starbucks, but now it's probably 4. And I sit there and I go, we live in an amazing time where we can do things that we never were able to do. Now, do you have to send a box to? No. And scripturally, you're not obligated. But can you? Would you? Are you concerned? Do you want to? It's the heart of generosity. It's like, it's amazing to me how, $25, that's a lot of money for what? I meet very few people who get into financial crises because they give too much to charity. Car payments, house payments, drug addictions, pies, food. So here you have in our world this 7.8 million people, and out of that you have 195 countries, but only 48 of them make over $867.50 a month. 48 out of 195 countries. Isn't that crazy? Think about it. And of course, when you look at world populations, you deal with India is past China, but they're both at 1.4 billion people. They as between them and us, that's out of the 7.8 billion. That's like you're down to 4-point-something billion. A huge amount of the global population is India, China, us. But we're at 300 million, maybe pushing 400 million, but 1.4, we're way behind the big guys in that sense, right? And by the way, God loves people. He doesn't care where they're at. You think, and the Lord God looks at the earth and blesses just like people in California. You know where I'm going with that? Like, did you see that incredible verse where he says, the whole earth's his and everything in it? Never play God. That is his, beginning to end. And by the way, the top 9 countries are the ones that make $5,875 a month. The top, no, not 5, 10, 9 actually, 9 countries. We're number 7, believe it or not. You know why, though? The ones that are higher than us are smaller, wealthier tax havens, maybe. Switzerland, Luxembourg, the European Bank, Dubai, places like that. Now, here's the kicker. We're going to learn about generosity. We're going to learn about some Christian lifestyle that goes into being generous. And do we need that in the United States? Here's the painful moment. 1/3 of the U.S. households don't give anything. Two-thirds. When you average out 2/3, the other 2/3 of all American households, the average giving of any kind is 4%. And by the way, I would say that this is an offset number that's inaccurate because people tend to, typically, if they're religious, they'll push to 10. And if they are religious but they don't understand generosity, most will land right around 2%. And I'm not saying any charity, anything, not churches, anything. When the vast majority of global wealth is in the United States. Now, there's the disparagement within the nation. Do you remember the quote? Don't get it wrong. Within the nations, there are disparagement. So the way we look on poverty here versus India and others, there is a difference. There's a huge difference. Our monthly average income is $6,364 per household, which breaks it down for $12.5 for dad, $12.5 for mom, and then if you got your grandma living with you or the kids old enough, $11,000, that kind of thing. And so then it sets you within a lower income if you make $36,000 a year. $36,000, your lower income, versus $64.50 or $205.50. Fascinating, isn't it? And the reason I bring this up, it's not a guilt trip. It really isn't. It's an actuality. Because what was really cool over the last decade before COVID is global poverty was going down. Did you guys know that? It was cool because it was like global poverty was going down. Now it's a bit of a kick. We'll see what happens with the war drums sounding. We'll see what happens. But the reality is globally, the earth is God's and everything in it. And what I'm telling you is everything in it is he dropped a whole lot of wealth into one little country called the United States of America. And the question isn't whether we have it. The question is, what are we doing with it? That's the conviction. You know, if you're straining to get $25 out of your wallet, you need to hear about this. And this is, for me even, by the way, I was raised in a church, quote unquote, had some pretty good, loving parents. But I'm telling you this, it wasn't until my 20s when I started to realize what living for Jesus looked like. And I began to realize that is not the way I was raised. So I'm going to share with you 3 ingredients to love's boundaries, 3 sort of healthy lifestyles. But these are disciplines and habits. If you begin the journey today, tell me next year how it's going. Because they will not happen by next week. This isn't like the miracle of the discipline. A discipline in your life is not like, poof, all of a sudden I exercise 4 days a week. If it was, I'd be asking for that miracle. Hallelujah. Right? That's the miracle I want. No, a discipline is you really have to work at it. There's the pain to it. There's the pressure to it. So the first ingredient I want to give you, the first step you have to take into this world, and these are step by step. First of all, love simplifies your lifestyle. Love simplifies your lifestyle. A friend of mine worked for marketing down in Santa Monica, and there's a company that spent over $600,000 to figure out what's the word we have to use to sell this product to people. And you know what the word they came up with was? That American people are hungry for it. Simplicity. Everything from your phones, car, everything is too complicated. And we're not the only generation to deal with this, but it's interesting, even Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, the wise man Suleiman, he says this in Proverbs 37-9. He goes, "Oh God, I beg 2 favors from you. Let me have them before I die. First, help me never to tell a lie. Second, give me neither poverty nor riches. Give me just enough to satisfy my needs. For if I grow rich, I may deny you and say, 'Who's the Lord?' I got everything I need. And if I am too poor, I may steal and thus insult God's holy name." It's a beautiful verse. Give me neither poverty nor riches. Richard Foster gives sort of a harsh, I think he was a little passionate on this one. Richard Foster did a book dealing with Christian disciplines. Neat guy, I actually met him. And he has this, I'm going to give you a quote from his book, but he really attacks this. He's very much into simplicities. And he says this: contemporary culture lacks both the inward reality and the outward lifestyle of simplicity. The lust for affluence in contemporary society is psychotic. We buy things we do not want to impress people we do not like. The modern hero is the poor boy who purposely becomes rich rather than the rich boy who voluntarily becomes poor. And we still find it hard to imagine a girl could do either. I don't know about you, but that was like painful. I was about to omit that last little part. I was like, man, is that sexist? Is that what? It was like grinding on me. But the truth is, we're messed up. Man, if I gain my value, my identity from our culture, it's psychotic out there. There's so much flying everywhere, so much, ugliness. Simplicity really allows you to concentrate. Now listen, carry with me here. It allows you to concentrate on what you need and measure it by what you use. Okay, so like if I was wanting to get to your heart, I'd say something like, so what's your weekly habit of simplifying your life? Well, what's the discipline you put into your life intentionally to be simple? And everybody will go, I didn't know that was a question. Everybody out there will say, I believe in simplicity. But where's the habit? Where's the lifestyle? Did Jesus have a lifestyle of simplicity? The man who had nowhere to lay his head? Who owned everything and gave up everything? Wow, ouch. Oh, come on, don't make Jesus practical. Because then I have to change my lifestyle. Oh, he was painfully practical. My wife and I, so I'll give you a step. Instead of a conviction, I give you a step. My wife and I learned this years ago, and it has helped us. We're still working on it. Because you're attacked every day by stuff. Stuff. And more stuff. Stuff. Here's some more stuff. You need this stuff to help that stuff to move you into this stuff. That's the culture you're in. That is not simplicity. That, in fact, is probably the definition of confusion. And we've done it to everybody. But the thing that we did is we learned that once a year, we take a look at everything we own and we ask the simple questions. Do we use it? If not, why in the world do we have it? We get rid of it. It's called inventory. We call it inventory because, companies do it. They clear out their stock. They bring in the inventory, right? We call it inventory, household inventory. Once a year, we look at all of our stuff. If it's memorabilia, stick it in a box, put it in the attic. I got that. But if everything's memorabilia, what do you use? Right? And then is what you're using it for good is a good question. But we do inventory once a year. And for years now, people have come to our church, and whether they're here or somewhere else now, they'll come back and say, we do that. That has been such a lifesaver. Why? It's amazing how much junk you can accumulate in a year. Isn't it? Think about it. Between those little thrift shops and the neighborhood dumping things on your doorstep, or you could throw things back at them and get a buck under your mat. I mean, there's so many ways to transport stuff right now. It just comes at you. It's challenging at Christmas now. It's like, I want to give you a gift, but dude, you've got so much. And now, and people are becoming hopefully more minimalist, if that's the right way to say it. But it's like, and by the way, the monastic movement started because of somebody frustrated with stuff. Did you know that? Came out of Ignatius came out of a wealthy trading family, hated it, came to Jesus. His conversion to Jesus, you know what it meant? He had a sister, so he set his sister up financially for life, and then he gave everything else away, and he went into the desert. And the way the monastic movement started was everybody was so freaked out by what he did and fascinated, they would go out to the desert to ask him why. And guess what he would do? He'd start talking about Jesus. And they would bring him bread. He'd talk about Jesus. And thus you have the beginning of what is called the monastic. And again, I'm not pushing monasticism, trust me. But I am saying, for some people, it means give it away. Let go. Let go. Simplicity. Where's the discipline? What do you do to make your life simple? Because in this culture, here's what I'm going to tell you, and this is the hard thing, is if I could walk up to you and say, what did you give up? You'd sit there and give up. What do you mean? That means I have to let go. See, our hands are always like this. Give me the groceries, pile it high, keep adding things, not give away things. This is our whole mentality. Why would I give up something? I have 20 pairs of shoes and I need 5 more. Why would I give up a pair of shoes? I use them. I can make great excuses, by the way. You sit down and you do an inventory, and you base the inventory not so much on what you want from a hedonist perspective, but from what Jesus wants you to do with what you got. The reason you can't follow Jesus is because you've got too much stuff to get around. But then there's the second step. Once you begin the road of simplifying your life, you come to the second step here. Love lives in contentment. Love lives in contentment. You see, contentment is that condition of the heart. It's not a condition of how much money you have. It's not your pocketbook condition. It's not your daily planner condition of like, well, how much stuff do I have to do today? It's not your ability. Like, I can't do that. I don't have that ability. No, contentment is a condition of the heart. And the Lord taught us so beautifully in Philippians 4. Listen to what he says here. This is Paul, but this is God speaking to us. I have learned to be content whatever what? I know what it is to be in need. I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do all this through him who gives me strength. I do all this through who? Him, not me. This message preaches not just here, but in the third world. This tells anybody, whether they have wealth or they live in poverty, you can have what? Contentment. You know, we tend to go over to third worlds and think, oh, we're so, we have so much to give them. I've been in some places in the third world where I would much rather have that attitude here because these people are content. They have learned the value of contentment with Jesus. I love it. It's beautiful. It's you can tell you're not content when it's that unsettledness of heart, always wanting something. I like to, there's a little phrase I'm going to use. We think as Americans that it's about the enoughs, the not enoughs. Not enough money. I can't do that. Not enough money. Not enough time. I don't have enough time. Not enough ability. Can't do it. But do you realize what you are given, all of it is from God? And God says it's enough? Are you content, whether you make a dime or not? I'm not saying you can't be ambitious. You can't have godly ambitions. You can't do this or that. But the truth is, if God called you to a third world, boy, if you couldn't give up anything, and I've met missionaries like that, and they are a bad representation of Jesus. They go to a foreign field, and they don't live like the people. In most of these countries, they don't have 2 or 3 servants. You see where I'm going with this? So often we export some really ugly things and we call it Jesus. Don't do that. Are you content with what you have? Bishop John V. Taylor said, our enemy is not possessions, but excess. Our battle cry is not nothing, but enough. In fact, Timothy says this, God teaches us this, godliness with contentment is what? If you really believe contentment is great gain, how much would you work to have it every day of your life? No matter what tomorrow brings, are you content with what you have, no matter what happens? That's a soul question. That's the only person that can answer that is you in a dark room, you and God together in a dark room searching your heart. But I will tell you, there's a whole lot of evil that comes out of vain conceit and selfish ambition that has destroyed churches, people, governments, cultures. Why do we seek contentment? Well, one of the biggest things here, folks, is we need to be free from anything that keeps us from loving Jesus first and loving your neighbor the same. You need to be free from that stuff. Well, stop holding on to things. be free. We should be more open-handed about everything. You see, once you have simplified your lifestyle to these loving boundaries, once you have taken that inventory, once you have found contentment with what you have and sort of who you are within that boundary of the heart, then love prepares you for what it told you in Ephesians, the good works I have planned for you. Good works. But if you, folks, if you are not simply living your life with Jesus and content with your life, you will never do the good works God has planned for you. Why? You don't have the time. You don't have the money. You don't have the ability, but you got all the excuses. How did you get those? Reevaluate. Because this last one teaches us that love cultivates generosity. It works it like soil to the farmer. It works it. Like, I'd love to sit there and say, I know people in our church who are generous, and I'd love to say they started that way. Truth is, from what I know and of myself and others in our church, it took a lot of work. They had to realign their pocketbooks, their budgeting, their time, their abilities. They had to relook at how they use their time, how they invest their abilities, and they had to make Jesus a priority. Crazy thought. If you choose to follow Jesus, Jesus is a priority. Love cultivates generosity. In fact, David, man after God's heart, he said, though your riches increase, do not set your what on them? Don't, you can do a lot with it, but don't put your heart in it. This is really fascinating because people will try to tell Christians, well, you should be living in poverty because of Jesus. You should be wealthy. How about that? Health and wealth. You should have $1 gazillion because you know Jesus and blah, blah, blah. And you get all these mixed messages. The truth is, you should do whatever Jesus tells you to do, and he'll give you what you need to do. So get over your whatever kingdom you're building for yourself and start building his kingdom. You see, when Jesus advised the rich young ruler about the kingdom of God, he told him to do what? Give it all away. And he walked away sad because what? Not going to do it. And yet, when he hit the tax collector, Matthew, he was so saved and changed that he was like, I'm gonna rectify half of what I have, this and that, pay off all the debts, and pay back twice and 10 times. I mean, the guy, he still had money when he was left over, by the way. Like, you take a really rich guy and you cut out half their wealth, what are they? Still rich. Right? I mean, I'm sure if one of our wonderful billionaires in this country decided to give half of it away, those are the miracles you should pray for. He elevated, get this, Jesus is so cool. He elevated the widow in her little mites. She gave these pennies. He elevated that because she gave out of her need. What a brilliant Savior, huh? Think about it. He had fun with the tax collectors. Oh, it's in the fish's mouth. I mean, you got to admit, that's fun. Like, if you're like God and you can you need my taxes, go check the fish, Now do this. Think about Jesus' culture and how he lived simply and how he lived contently. And now compare that culture to ours. Realizing that Jesus' strongest warnings were about abuses of wealth. How much more in this highly wealth-driven, affluent, money-driven society, nation, how much more should we take seriously those questions Jesus put upon us? That's why I said each one of these, this is like classroom 101. You could study these for months, but more than that, it will take you months to discipline your life to become it. What walks through the door of our church when people have never heard about who Jesus really was are a bunch of people who are sort of frenzied of heart, too busy, not enough, all the enoughs, not living simplicity, living in chaos. Why? Because those are the schemes we devise in our sin nature. Solomon had a great verse about it. Do you realize God created you to be more singularly focused? But what was the focus supposed to be? Him. We went the other way. We made schemes and plans of how we want to get wealthy, how we want to do this, how we want to have these relationships. We make all the chaotic schemes of life. And then we wonder why we have so much anxiety in our society. Let me share with you like an inner heart thing that you could do for anxiety. Let me show you how this can help if you cultivate generosity. First of all, in your heart, if you really receive everything you have, like take everything you have, good, bad, and different, including your debts, if you gave everything you have, receive it all and say, this is all a gift of God. You know, I have a debt on a house. You know what, though? I own a house. You know how hard it is to get a house? I have rent to pay every month. That's great. You have a roof over your what? Your head. So many people living under the freeway. This has got to stop. And you sit there and go, we need to receive what we have as a gift. In your heart, if you just sat in a quiet place and prayed to God and said, thank you, with gratitude, thanksgiving, and you said, thank you, all the gifts you've given me, the health or non-health, I walk with a limp, but at least I what? Thank you. Receive what you have as a gift. We think it's all ours and we what? Deserve it. Well, based on the statistics I shared with you earlier, what do you deserve globally? If majority wins, you deserve to be in poverty. Crazy thought. Nobody's fighting for that one. Receive what you have. It's a gift. What we have should be cared for by God. So then you have to ask, am I letting God have it? Am I letting him have my budget? Am I letting him have my day planner? Am I letting him have my abilities? Do I love him? Do I serve him? Do I give him everything in my life? Whoa, those are tough questions. For some of you, it's like, I have a hard enough time getting up and going to a church on Sunday morning. You tell me I got to give Jesus more than that? Think about it. This is the culture we live in. And the third thing you would do is you would say what we have should be available to others. Here's what I got. I don't want to give other people my debt. I'd like to sometimes, right? Like, hey, you want it? It's yours. But I do want to give other people my time, my abilities, right? What are you willing to give to others? I'll tell you what, if you put those three things in there, into a prayer life, into your heart life, into your soul life, guess what happens? It creates freedom. Freedom from what? Anxiety. Which is a mental health? Yeah, mental health. You don't think what Jesus brings to your life isn't just mental health, it's heart health. Because usually what I find is people who struggle with mental health, there's a lot in here that needs to be cleaned up too. They were taught poorly. What got in there? Poorly done. Poorly done. I mean, you were actually taught stuff will make you happy. You do realize that. That's the theology of America. And by the way, it's very convincing. So, what do you do with all of this? The advice of Jesus is powerful. What are you doing to cultivate generosity in your life? And if you think it's about this church and this selfish pastor who wants the gold Rolex, then do it somewhere else, but do it. Where are you cultivating generosity in your life? I don't have much. You got a penny? You got a penny? I know a widow's mite. Start it with a penny. If you can't do it with a penny, you can't do it with a pound. Begin the road. Most people I have found in churches, when they start giving to church or to life, they start out right around 2%. Problem is, most people in our culture end up staying there. That's not generous. Think about it. Even if you just went up to a stranger on the street and you said, if I have 100% of anything and I said you are so generous with it, what percentage would that be? 2%? You do the math. Oh, ouch. Kelly, you're saying if the average household, well, a third of them don't even give anything to any charity. The other 2/3, the average is 4%. What am I saying about culture? What are the statistics saying about culture? It's not me. You go look it up. Enjoy. Is that who you want to be? I want to be part of the 4%ers. Is that who Jesus wants you to be? You see, when Jesus saves you, boy, he empowers you to live a whole new life. I don't expect you to give more than 4% if you're not following Jesus. I will say if you're following Jesus, he's going to challenge you to give everything. And you begin to realize once I lay it on him and I ask his guidance and I say, how can I share? I'm open-handed with my life. And you become generous, and this church has become generous. And this church, do you realize we went through, I want to share, this is a fact. This church went through 2008. Remember the 2008 thing? And we thought moving in, we knew something was going to hit. So the leaders of this church prepared and said, we're going to just like conservative on the budget, tight on the budget. And then 2008 hits, 2009, 2010, and we keep thinking we will get hit. You know what happened? Nothing. Why? Because you were generous. You know what happened during COVID? When so many churches got hit? And I'm not saying we're some sort of exceptional, be here or be nowhere kind of mentality. What I'm saying is this: we had no financial struggles. And it doesn't make sense. 2 + 2 should equal 4. We had 100 people move out of state. Financially, that means what? We should get what? Yes. It's logical. We were prepping for it. When it didn't happen, guess what? So, can I just say, shock, whatever. I've had some incredible financial people that have helped us in this church through the years, and they always end up saying the same thing. Church budgets don't make sense. You should have dumped in 2008, you should have dumped in the COVID, and you didn't. The only thing that makes sense is Jesus taking care of his church. And he owns the cattle on how many hills? But that doesn't mean you get it tomorrow because you want to buy the car. But it means he will take care of you, no matter where he sends you. He'll take care of he'll give you the stuff you need. He'll prepare all that. Cultivate generosity on the one hand and simplicity and contentment on the other. And I just gave you a 6-month message. I was so hesitant to preach this message today. You know why? Because every one of these are disciplines. I'm not asking you to listen and agree with this. I'm asking you to be wise and do it. Don't be a man who builds his house on the sand, and the wind and the rain come, and that house falls. But be wise. Build your house on a rock. Wind and rain will come, but the house will stand. The pride of our humanism will destroy your generosity. The hedonism of our materialism will destroy your generosity. They're the two biggest dangers to our wealth, because they can make us forget God and they can make us despise fellow human beings, all who are created in the image of God. When I first really felt this, and I hope you really feel it, I was convicted. I was like, I got to work on these things. If I hope I convicted you enough to do something, but not so much that you just beat yourself up. I didn't want that. I don't want you to just stop that. I'm saying take a good look at where you're at. Thank God you're saved either way, unless you're not, and then get saved. Get Jesus in your life now and learn to be a generous person. I mean, generous with everything. But don't beat yourself up. Beat yourself into like exercising one more time a week. Kind of beat yourself up. But it's still hard. You're right. You're going to go through the pains of that. I understand that because I myself went through those pains. But what I learned about Jesus in the road to generosity, I would not give away for anything in my life. And today, we get to celebrate generosity on a scale that is unfathomable because we get to do the Lord's Supper, of which great sacrifice was made of time, money, and ability, nailed it, for my forgiveness. And if you knew who I was, you would say, wow. Because just like you, I have fallen, I have sinned, but I am now a saint. Why? Because of what Kelly does? No, what God does through me. That's the simple answer. You want to know how to be a generous person, let Jesus come into your life and be saved. And don't forget what he did for you. So today we're going to look at the Lord's Supper and we're going to practice communion. But in this practice this morning, I'd like you to think through these three things. Do you live a simple lifestyle? Are you content with what you have? And are you working and cultivating more generosity into your life? And how does this reflect that? Oh, 100 ways. Because on this cross, he taught us all sins are forgivable, including all the ugly things that are going on in the world. And yeah, they may not be my neighbors, but they're in my prayers. They were made in his image. People say, what do you think about the Ukraine? What do you think? It kills me because we got brothers and sisters that are Russian and Ukrainian. What team do you think I'm on? Jesus. I want all those people to be saved. And I'm not putting up with all the sin and the evil. I agree, because it's out there. They're doing it. But that was like Genesis 1, if you never got the memo, that we enter into with Jesus the battle between good and evil. So if you deny there's evil, well, you're psychotic. You deny that there's good, you're delusional. Because the truth is there is good and evil. And the good news is, this was good. Jesus is good. Preach Jesus and his generosity. When I think of the night that he was betrayed, this is a guy sitting in a room knowing full well his betrayer was right there. And in light of that, knowing this guy was going to walk out of here and get me crucified, in light of that, he said, give thanks. Who among you entering into the lion's den of life would say thank you to God? He said, take it, divide this among you. There are, if I can get mine open, this is the battle of communion for me. Oh, thank you. When he took this symbolically, they didn't realize the crucifixion was to come. But when he said, this is my body given for you, do this in remembrance of me, he did know what it would mean. And when he took the cup for forgiveness, it tells you why he went to the cross. I will let go this life so that all humanity that I created in my image might be given forgiveness for their lives. May you drink this in remembrance of him. I don't know where you're at in your life. Maybe you're swamped by too many of the not enoughs. Maybe you haven't simplified your life and you look at it and think, wow, my life is way too not simple. Maybe your life is not content. Maybe you're not prepared to be generous. You can't even eke out $25. Begin a journey today to be a generous follower of Jesus, because Jesus is our example and he gave it all for you and me.